Here we go on Chapter 2 in this Civil 3D class this spring semester. We're going to begin with the chapter is called Leveraging a Dynamic Environment, which is mainly diving into the Civil 3D functions and how they are integral to making a more modern program. So we'll start by going into this folder, Chapter 2 Lab Files. It's a zip file which will have many files in it. You're going to hand in 5 or 6. But if I go to them here, so here's all the files you'll see. It's about 14 items with 21 files in one folder. We're going to learn with data shortcuts here at the end. So you have your complete files. Remember to turn these in, these 6, or if you forget to do the profile, that's fine, but these 6, I'll know the difference pretty quickly between them and the complete ones, but the complete ones are there to check your work once again, just reminding you of that. So these are the main ones to hand in at the end, but verify them with your complete files to see what you did. So moving on, I already have them open, and I'm going to start in the Objects and Styles drawing open, but let's talk about Chapter 2 for a minute. So we're going to learn here how to leverage the connection between Civil 3D objects, we'll talk about in a minute, and Civil 3D styles. They work hand in hand. The objects and the styles. The objects themselves are dynamic, and the styles control how the objects look. The same with Civil 3D labels and Civil 3D label styles. The labels, the Civil 3D labels, are dynamic, and the styles control how they appear and look, and they're very integral. Those same labels work with Civil 3D objects as well. We're going to find that out in a minute, which is the connection that a lot of us will see for the first time in this chapter. So the difference between objects and styles is objects are things like, say, a surface or an entity we create of a design. That is an object, and we'll see more of that soon. And labels are what we can put on said object. There's a certain palette of labels that are available to add to Civil 3D objects, which is something we're going to keep learning and doing as well. So those objects and labels have a dynamic relationship in what can be applied, what type of labels, especially to what objects. And really it's just sharing the data in a dynamic Civil 3D environment as we learn through data shortcuts at the end of Chapter 2, a way to link objects and styles and labels and label styles between drawings. So multiple users can edit between drawings in different phases of a project depending on how the drawing is set up. Drawing setup is not an easy thing for a beginner CAD user of Civil 3D. It takes a lot of practice in what works and what doesn't. Manipulating drawings, if one user is doing the design start to finish, it has a much different setup than if 8 users are taking it start to finish, designing different things in all 8 drawings. So that's a difficult concept to fully understand here, but we're going to attempt it a little bit at the end of Chapter 2. So if we dive into page 18, we're going to start talking about an object. So a Civil 3D object, it is affected by a Civil 3D style. Object is basically considered, it's kind of a generic way of saying it's a Civil 3D entity. It's an intelligent piece of our design model. It has information about itself, and it has an ability to interact with other elements. So say this surface is what we'll start with, is a Civil 3D object. It is something that can interact with alignments, profiles, and all kinds of other stuff we'll talk about in a minute. It is an object that also it can be affected by a style, which we'll talk about in a minute, how it appears. It's a more dynamic piece of AutoCAD inside of an AutoCAD drawing that can be affected by Civil 3D styles and also can interact with other Civil 3D objects and labels. So going on from that, we'll go to an area. Let's just open this drawing for now, labels and styles. Here is another Civil 3D object, a Civil 3D, it's an alignment. So we have it there picked. We also have our right-click properties. We can go into different things to edit it. We also have our contextual ribbon we're going to keep learning about. We actually clicked on the alignment labels here. Now if I click on this entity, I have the alignment clicked, not the alignment labels. We also can click on said entities by going into the tool space tree, and here are the alignments here. We can say right click and select you this way. So it selected my alignment, as you can see, in two of my different viewports, in the upper right and the lower right. There's many different ways to get to these Civil 3D objects. Another one would be a profile. This is a Civil 3D profile of the vertical of likely, I believe, this alignment here. It falls in the tree. We can also find it under here. Here is the profile that I have selected, for example, and it's on what it's called a profile view. That's how this profile is displayed on a profile view, the vertical or elevation of this alignment running on this surface. They're all interactive with each other. Another one would be, if we go to another drawing file, just bear with me, are parcels. These are Civil 3D styles built with very specific geometry, these land divided parcels. So if I pick on this lot or parcel number, I have a parcel selected. This is a Civil 3D entity that interacts with other Civil 3D entities. This is an alignment, an offset alignment. Here is a center line alignment. This center line alignment is offset this amount. To make an offset alignment, these parcel lines hit it at a certain angle, and they're all interactive with each other. And this parcel line can be moved along this offset alignment dynamically with grips. It also has parcel labels that are dynamic and bearing and distance of that parcel size. This alignment has alignment labels of the stationing, and this is a different nomenclature you're maybe not used to seeing in the civil engineering and land surveying world. Is 2 plus a pair, or 2 plus 00. It's two ways of saying it, but mostly say 2 plus a pair is the station essentially 200 feet. That 2 plus 00 means 200 feet. So we'll get used to seeing that nomenclature. As it gets bigger, over 1,000, this is 1,000, 10 plus a pair. That's a common nomenclature you'll see in this industry. Those are labels, though, Civil 3D labels of that alignment. So they're all working hand in hand. So going back to objects and styles drawing, we'll go back to Civil 3D object, a surface. This is a Civil 3D object called a surface. Well, it's made up of a style, so it has a style, existing contours 1 to 5 foot. And if you go look on page 20, you can see all the different styles you're changing it in the background. I can go to it, right click here. I'm going to try to stay on the contextual ribbon up here after I select it. I'm going to say surface properties. I'm going to change the style of this Civil 3D object to something different. I'm going to change it to, let's just change it to slope banding or elevation banding for now. These are some default Civil 3D styles. It'll show a quick, this is the same Civil 3D entity, but a different Civil 3D style representing Civil 3D object is represented by a different style here. It's the same object, just shown differently through a Civil 3D style. That style being, in this case, elevation banding 2D. And styles are made up by many options deep within here. So these are many options in here. We're not going to go, that's more of a CAD manager job, stuff I've had to do at other companies. It's a little out of the scope of this class to cover all that stuff, but we'll dabble in it. We'll put this back to 1 to 5. I think it was on background. That's good enough. So it's more of a plan view of contours from the top down. What are contours? So contours are the same elevation at a given spot that make a geometry. So this contour is all the same. If I hover here on this surface, see I have some information. It says it's a tin surface Civil 3D object. It says its name of the style is or the name of the surface, excuse me, is existing ground. Its Civil 3D style is contours 1 to 5 background. Its layer it's on, its AutoCAD layer is, as you can see, C3DO tin, and its elevation of that contour is 195. So this entire geometry is 195 feet. That's how contour, I'm sure any of you who looked at topographic maps have a bit of an understanding of contours. So this area, not a lot of changes in contour lines. This is pretty flat. This area is very steep. It's a very steep area, a lot of bunched in contour lines. This is from the top view, keep in mind. I'm looking in the top view if you look here. So this is the way I want it. In this view, I am in the southwest isometric, okay? That's one way to get to it quickly here, or by the view cube here as well. So I got my view cube. If I go activate this model space, I got my view cube here, different ways to tilt it and move it and orientate it, or I could go here as well. And this is different rendering styles. But I'm going to keep it 2D wireframe top is most of what we're going to be working in. So back to the contours. This is a steep area, tight amount of contours in a small spot. So if you could go to it in 3D, I'll try to go gingerly. Remember, this view is not always your friend. It likes to move very aggressively. It's hard to tell probably because this is a pretty large surface. But over in this area is where the steepness is. I'm not going to dwell on it too long. Let's try orbiting using this command. Actually, we'll forget that. It doesn't seem to graphically, there we go. I had to zoom out a little bit. Hard to see here, but the steep area in here is representative. This flat area here is also in 3D. You can see it up here in these tin triangle lines. It's very flat. It's harder to see on a bigger surface that's spread out. But we'll basically start by messing with some of this on page 21. I'm in the Objects and Styles drawing still, and I'm just going to click on one of the contour lines, and the Properties box is open, and it comes open here. If it isn't open already, turn it on in your Home tab right here, or right click and say Properties here. But I have a style at this time on the instructions. It's saying it's at contours 1 to 5 background likely. We're going to put it back to elevation banding. As you can see, it changes the style of the Civil 3D object. I'm going to change it to contours and triangles. Now we have our tin triangle showing with the contours. So this is all the points the surface is triangulating to. And many of these triangles can go to 2 different point locations. So oftentimes the surface is made up of points and triangles. Usually the triangles are twice as many as the points. So they're made up by a lot of tin lines in this nature. Anyway, clicking back on the surface, let's go back to the Properties box here, and let's change the Civil 3D surface or Civil 3D object style to contours 1 to 5 design now. Now they look a little different. This is brighter colors that pop. They might print differently for whatever reason. This is our design contours, so we know that's our final ground. That's not the case, and here this is an existing ground that we land surveyed, very likely, judging by how it's kind of wavy and natural looking. We'll go back to what it was, contours 1 to 5 background, indicating it's an existing ground surface. So that's just us changing it around. We'll mess with editing the surface style a little bit. I'll click the same surface, and this time we'll go up in the ribbon. We'll say edit surface, edit surface style, like this. In the contextual ribbon, you'll know when it turns blue, I'm in Civil 3D 2022. It's going to be very similar in 2020. If it isn't, we'll talk about that later in class, but we'll hit edit surface style here. There's also multiple ways to get to this. We're going to change a couple things. We're going to go to the Display tab right here, and we're going to just go to Major Contours, and we're going to change the major contours. This indicates they're on. This indicates they're off when it's blue. Let's change this major contour. It's a lot of things we could change. I'm going to change it to a, let's not even change the layer, let's just change the color to something really noticeably different, like something hot, like let's do orange and hit. If I apply if I want to do more, but okay if I'm done. And there we changed that style of this Civil 3D object surface. There we go. The major contours are now orange. That's basically it on that. We'll go to page 23 and we're going to start talking about connecting labels and label styles which go on objects. So one thing, I'm going to try to open up a drawing where some might be created already. And we have a few different objects. Here is a surface elevation label. I picked it. I also have contextual ribbon and stuff up here. And it also says what it is here when I pick it. Label, surface elevation label. They're dynamic. This is dynamically linked. You can tell. It says it's dynamically linked to the EG plus FG surface. If I move it, just type in M for the move command, it'll change its elevation. It's dynamically linked to the EG plus FG surface. So wherever you move it spatially, it's going to change its elevation. Try one more time. Let's just use the grip this time instead of the move command. Grips are a friend. See, it's dynamic. So the next one will be alignment station offset label, and we could add that. If I click on this, this is an example of an alignment station offset label. It's probably referencing, I'm pretty sure if we look at it here, let's expand this out a little bit slowly. Let's close this transparent command. It says this alignment station offset label, I have it selected. It comes up here. It comes up in properties, remember. It shows what it is. It says what alignment it's linked to here as well. And it says what, so it's a station offset label style. It says what style it is here. It is this style, station offset and coordinates. It's getting a little deep. I'll try to go slow through it. And this is what this style looks like. I could quickly change this style. This is just station offset. You saw my label changed. These are a very big thing to edit with CAD management and getting something just dialed in. There's a lot of different versions you can make, different entities, different variables, and things to link dynamically. A lot of argument on this and which ones maybe a company might want to use. Another label style on the page 24 would be, for example, a profile grade break label. This type of label shows the location and elevation of slope change along a profile. I'm starting with three very common ones, three Civil 3D entities: surfaces, alignments, and profiles. There are three of our backbones we're going to get into in the next chapters. If I pick on this, we're going to look for grade break label. These are curve labels, but let's pick on this. Here it is here on the end. This is just a one spot on my vertical of my profile. Let me pick the label. It's a vertical alignment PVI label group. So let me hit the control button, and while I select it, and I only have one selected instead of the entire group. That's a little bit beyond this chapter, but still relevant. This is just one of the labels. Profile, point of vertical intersection label is what that means. There's one of them there. This is just another label. Not exactly the label that is on page 24, but these are labels of a profile nonetheless. This is a vertical alignment. Well, I'll hit the control button first, and then I'll left click. I only have one selected. If I don't do that, I just pick that, it selects all of them on this profile. See that? If I hit escape, escape's your friend, it gets you out of commands, gets you out of trouble. If I hit control, hold it, now hit left click, I only have one selected. It's basically the grade of this profile line, this vertical profile line label. So I'm just checking some labels here for my profile view now, or excuse me, my profile, which is this line with the vertical on this profile view. And we can change that label style here. Changed it. And they're dynamic. Back to grade, back to slope. They function dynamically. They link to the Civil 3D object, which is the profile. They have their own styles of themselves, the labels, just like the Civil 3D objects do. So we're going to go to exercise. Well, before we do that, even parcels, same thing. The parcel labels of this subdivision here. These parcel segment labels have their own style as well. So we can right click and go to label properties, or we could go up here as well, or we could change the line style right here. There's a few ways. It's a little confusing at first and overwhelming, I know. So we're going to start by one at a time. I'll pick this label. Let's go to our contextual ribbon, edit the label properties, give it a second. I had to go down to this one, my bad. Alright, anytime now, Civil 3D. Oh, right. Since this is a label, a lot of times they don't open the same way. Sometimes you have to only change them here. So I'm going to change the label here to slope over distance, for example. The line label, just a distance. Okay. Let me move this label. So we have two of them overlapping because we have double labels. So let me pick this parcel segment label, and I'll show you how to change its styles right there. There we go. A lot of them don't match. They're different. They don't look like the green ones. This is this kind of stuff that takes the company sometimes a long time to get correct and get working right. But back to the objects and styles area. I think we're done talking about the overall view of them. We're going to move on to page 25, the labels and styles drawing. And let's go to the top right viewport and click the label here. I believe it's a station offset label, alignment station offset label, yep. And our properties area, so we have it selected, and we can edit the label style going into here. We have 4 different label styles for station offset existing. Let's hit cancel. Let's select it again. And it's saying just you can change which style it is right here. We'll just change station offset. That's all we're doing on page 25. Just showing you how to do that. Real quick after that, let's just leave this selected and let's change it back to station offset and existing right here. Changes a little bit. The style of the text changed is all. That's literally the only difference in the style. Now we're going to go deeper into the style so I can flip them back and forth a couple times. Same content, just different text formatting. And I right click and I can go to edit label style, or I could do that here. I have the one style of that label already selected, pre-selected. That's helpful. We can go to it this way as well. Edit label style once it's selected. This gets a little trickier and deeper, kind of like in Revit when we were editing types and various things. So I want to edit this style. This is a little different icons than the book, but they're very similar readout. We don't want to create a brand new one. We want to copy the current selection. Potentially, if we like this one, we want to use it as our base template, that view. Or we can just straight up edit this current selection, which we're going to do. Like that, and we'll hit OK. It takes us into the style editor. Okay. We're going to go to drag state. and it has us change just one option of the many hundreds. There's a lot of them. It says just the visibility to false of our leader. We hit apply. Sometimes it'll show us a preview closely or decently here. Let's hit OK. Hit OK. Our leader went away. So there's lots of little things you can edit in the styles. That's it for that area. As you can imagine, you can have hundreds of these styles, and oftentimes we do. So if I open a drawing from my own company at times, just to give an example, I will open a drawing that has, those ones are a little big. Let's open one that was on the border with some styles and a map of a whole different makeup. The styles and everything we're looking at in this book and text, this is very canned stuff straight from Autodesk, slightly edited. This is from a place that I've worked at before that has its own styles, for example. Let's look at a couple of them. And in this case, let's ignore the XREFs for now. And we want to look at one or two things. So I have a style of contour labels. So you can see I have a surface, and this is right by the ocean. This is literally the ocean right here, so that's elevation 0. Here's my contours. This is a surface contour label group, but they have their own style too. So I could change these here to a different label style. DJNA FG major. We'll do one with a border. So I just changed my contour label style for my map I did here for the border service on a railroad. Where's another one? Let's pretend to add one. Let me select this surface that I made this year. I'll say add labels. Let's bring up all my add surface label options. This dialog box will open. Say I want to add a spot elevation of our styles here. I'll say it's DJNA, let's just call it FG with a border style. The marker I'll leave as basic. Say add. Now watch your ribbon, it tells you what to do. Status bar, just like in Revit, the status bar says pick a point. I'll pick my point. Maybe pick another point. I want another elevation label on this surface. There's another point. I'll hit escape. Every label has what is called a drag state, so it's in its home state, I kind of call it. It also has a drag state. Mind your grips. This one, in every case, one grip does one thing, one does another. This one moves it. You can also hover on it and see your grip options come up. You can rotate the label and the marker. You can also do things like reset it. You can also use this one to grip it into a leader form or a drag state. That's just one style of many you can make. For example, I'm calling out elevations of this surface. I'll pick this one, I'll drag it out with this grip right here instead of the move grip. And the Civil 3D label style dictates how this label looks in both its home state and its drag state with this leader. So it has the labels are very dynamic, and when this surface information changes, these labels tied with it will change. So if there's new data in this surface that change the elevation, this will update. They work hand in hand dynamically. We'll leave this drawing. We'll go back to object relationships, a new drawing, third one. And so that's a big part of it, is they graphically work together, Civil 3D objects, labels, and the styles that control both the objects and the labels. That's going to be a huge theme of this entire learning experience with Civil 3D. It's a lot like other programs, types and properties and things like that, but just different names. Civil 3D objects, Civil 3D labels, and Civil 3D styles for both, if you think of three things. So on the typical land development project, There's dozens of designs that work together. And for example, now we're in this drawing and we started developing this site. A lot of times we start with this profile. Centerline of profile is a backbone piece. So it's saying a lot of times, and this is the case in the real world, the road is designed first by drawing this 2D path center line. A lot of things are built from that. Other roads over here, how it's graded out, sewer systems hitting it, these storm pipes touching it, anywhere to where the parcels touch the center line of the road possibly. So going into page 27, it's saying if the layout of the center line needs to change for some reason, which happens a lot, all these objects are dynamically linked. So this whole grading area and also this object, this alignment, is tied to this profile, which is its vertical component, which is also tied to this Civil 3D object, this storm system underground. So this is our finished grade surface. This is where it will be designed to. This is underground stormwater utilities underneath it. Here's the grade of that surface. These are all interlinked. So if one thing changes, labels, everything is going to change with it. So I'll show you quickly how that works in this next example into 27 and 28. So let's start out here. Let's just leave this open like that. Let's go into the profile view. Let's pretend I'm working, this is how this would be useful. I have my profile view or the vertical working here, my horizontal alignment working in the horizontal XY here, and I got my 3D view here visualizing it. That's not a bad work path, especially if you're trying to visualize things. All we're going to do is we're going to pick this profile, this black line, and we're going to change the PI. We're just going to bring it up. We're going to bring it up a little bit this way. We're changing the elevation of the road quite literally. Everything's linking, thinking. You saw down here, things were happening. I might have to change it more drastically, but you can see this moved with it. The storm drain. Let me move this further. Let's go just move it down to be drastic. All three of these views are linking together. Let's move it down in elevation. I'm changing the point of intersection of the profile view. There we go. You can see how this road changed a little. So did this. Let's zoom out a little. Let's use this grip to pull it straight down, the middle grip. Let's do a little at a time. Civil 3D can be very clunky in this manner. Like, you got to give it a little time. So my grading's changing. How the design's matching up with the existing. If I go into this view, you can see things are changing with it. I don't know if I dare orbit in that view. I just did to my peril. Let me hit Control Z to undo that. Control Z a couple more times. There we go. Zoom out a little. Same thing goes. Let me pick this alignment. And this is getting a little deeper than into page 29, but I'm going to move this. Let's change this radius to something out here. Give it a minute. I always do that with Civil 3D in these kind of moments. It didn't quite work. Let me move this back. So I'm moving the center line of this entire road. Let me hit F3, or you can hit your O snaps off right here. I don't want to snap to anything. I just want to free pick it. Give it a minute. I'm moving the center line quite a bit to the left, making the radius smaller. It didn't like that. It wasn't a possible solution. Let's just move it a little bit. Everything should move with it. Guess not. Let's try a smaller one out of curiosity. There's probably some constraints in the background not allowing me to do it. Let's just move the front of the road. Let's move it right here. It looks like everything's linked up, but this profile is not. So this was able to be moved around, up and down. The alignment is locked down. There's some deeper settings I'd have to go to change that. There, everything changed in the grading. My profile is pretty flat. So I'm just showing you some dynamic relationships between these three views. We'll move on to page 29. I'm going to keep moving into the next area in page 29, connecting objects to labels. So we'll move to the objects and labels DWG file. So this is pretty key, and I would totally agree with the book on this. One of the more important relationships between Civil 3D objects and Civil 3D labels is the fact that labeling is single-handedly one of the most time-consuming aspects of preparing plan sets in the civil world and land surveying. They take a while. So you have a lot of everything's done, but preparing a set of construction documents with a lot of labels is a very important part of the process. It has nothing to do with the design necessarily, but you need to convey the information on how things are to be built. So these profile labels, these elevation labels, adding a whole set of them to a complete plan set is a very time-consuming part of a drawing production, basically life cycle. And something like Civil 3D makes it a lot easier and less time consuming. So a big advantage of that dynamic relationship between objects and labels, it allows a user to create a single label that stays with the life of the project. For example, in my border drawing here, whenever the surface changes, this spot elevation changes. Let's say this spot elevation, or many of them, are in very important spots that are, let's just call it, they're conveying a design of this roundabout here. Let's say I have elevations on all these nodes that says how to construct the elevation of this roundabout. Well, they change when the design changes, and that's huge. So it enables the user to change an object, its design, and then the label to change after the fact. The initial part of adding all the labels is still time consuming, but once they're there, and that's the goal of the dynamic relationship between Civil 3D objects and Civil 3D labels. So we're going to open on exercise 2.4, the objects and labels DWG, and we're going to click on one of, let's see where they want. Elevation label reads, okay, I moved this around a little bit like a dummy. We'll click on it. It should read 190.02, but we'll click it right now. Or actually not, we don't need to click it. We're going to do something else, but just note what elevation it is right now. I might even move it down here so it says what it is in the book. You can see it moved down here as well. So I'm going to hit escape, nothing selected. Let me click one of the gray contour lines. This is the existing ground surface, and we're going to do something. We're going to edit surface and paste surface. This is a pretty cool command. Then we're going to select the main road AFG to click OK. We're going to paste this surface into and on top of the existing surface is what's going to happen. Now watch how these dynamic views shift here, here. Not as much here, I don't think, in this view. Let's just hit OK and see what happens. Got to give it a minute though. Excuse me. This surface overtook this surface. It was pasted on top of it. So I'll hit escape. You can see how it did it right here. This is the big takeaway of this chapter, watching how these views are dynamic with each other. This existing, designed little corridor in here was pasted over the top of this existing gray ground. And you can see what it looks like in the top view with these contours. They pasted on top of each other, with this being the dominant surface that pasted on top. So I have it selected here. You can see it also is selected in both viewports. I showed you in chapter 1 video how to turn these viewports off if you get sick of them. I would leave them for now to learn a lot more about Civil 3D. So notice this elevation label, like it said, it changed drastically. It was 190.02. This changed with it because it rides with that surface. On the top right viewport, it wants us to go to the station value 195. 195.68. That's the station we're approximately going to take the grip right in here, and we're going to move it out. So this, since I played with this earlier in this chapter, this should have read, if you didn't play with it like I did, should read, I think, 187.33. I moved it in a different spot, so just keep that in mind. As long as it changed, it's fine. I'm going to pick the center line of the alignment, and I'm going to click the triangular grip to drag it to the point near the west edge of the road. So look at figure 2.7 on page 30, and let me just pull this triangular grip. Let's just pull it a little bit. Let's just pull it a little ways out. Let the corridor model, give it a second. It'll change everything here and here. Okay, it tightened up that radius. It's just showing us how the road rebuilt. Don't mind my elevation label being off. That's pretty much all we're doing in this exercise, watching its dynamic environment of things moving around. Like I said, the station offset label, it follows the stationing. So stationing goes uphill. 11 plus a pair, which is 1100 or 1100. 1150, it's going up station, or 11 in a pair, and 11 plus 50. So if we move this, the offset, as this goes up station this way, this is considered the left hand side, this is considered the right hand side, because if you're following the station in this direction, uphill or up in number, this would be the right hand side. So that's how these the offset works, the label. Station just goes up with the station up or down. So let's move this label and watch how it moves dynamically. Here we go. What we're getting to in Civil 3D, we're just essentially creating instructions on how to build something. Labels being a big part of it. They're a time-consuming part, especially at the beginning, but they remain dynamic down the road as best we can with a lot of this stuff, which helps them to continue to be dynamic until all revisions are made. And 30 years ago we've progressed from ink and paper and all the way to these 3D intelligent objects, which have their flaws and a lot of bugs, and they like to move slow and have their issues sometimes, but it's a lot quicker. There's still quite an amazing amount of people that will try to do a lot of this drafting manually without the power of some of these Civil 3D styles, especially label styles. So that's something a lot of companies have caught up on in the last 10 years. Page 32 and 33 kind of talk about a lot of further out stuff. I'll touch on it briefly. On the top of page 32, we're talking about building information systems, which we just learned in Revit is a big deal when it comes to, that's been catching up a lot. BIM means building information modeling, and many civil engineering projects are incidental to a building. So the civil engineering, the design of this road and stuff, for example, there might be a building design here, and the civil deals with everything outside of the building, the roads and the alignments and the land earthwork. They can also get integrated into a BIM model, which I think later in this semester I'd like to integrate some of this stuff to a Revit model, because Revit has some of those capabilities to put a real-life accurate surface with the building model. That's becoming a big thing. Secondly, GPS guided machine control is becoming a big thing. So this finished surface, this corridor here that meshes with this existing surface, this new road coming in here, a lot of times these surfaces can be exported in various ways, which I can show you a little later through various ways, such as if I go to this is the design main road, and I right click it, I can export different types of files, maybe for example here a DEM, digital elevation model or a land XML, which is a very universal file. I could pick on said file, and you have certain options to do the same thing. We can extract data. We can also go to output and export land XMLs of various things and different types of data to go to a earth mover, and some of those data formats like DEM and land XML get literally input into the GPS of a bulldozer or scraper, and it'll tell them how close to the earth, to the design quantity they are as they grade this new terrain out. That's a big thing nowadays. Construction simulation is getting a little more advanced. That's tying the 3D spatial of a design, the X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and elevation, with other elements like time. That'd be kind of a 4D design, how it's designed with time, and also 5D, time plus cost plus spatial. That's a little beyond this course. There's some of the stuff when we design this road, we might pick on a corridor, and we can do a little bit of that by, it's not showing on this corridor. I might have to click on section views. Let's just view it for a minute. See, as you're going down this road, you're getting different quantities, but I'm going to close this for now. And one way, construction simulation, you would simulate what earth is going to be moved. So one of the ways to do that is in the Analyze tab, and there's different ways to compute materials of this, where the materials get cut out, where they get added in along a road, with these options with section views and sample line views. That helps us determine cost of roads, where it's feasible to add and take away materials. So that's kind of the construction simulation we're talking about. Visualization, we're using it to produce 3D visualizations. So someone might pick on this corridor, and these are getting beyond where a lot of people use. They'll look at analysis like sight distance. Can a car see around this corner? They'll use some analysis tools for that, or they'll drive this corridor and see what it looks like on a drive. So we might grab a feature line to drive that, and we'll drive along it, and it's a different simulation. So there's different simulations like that. See, we're following this feature line, or it's saying this is where we're on right now. It's different ways to visualize a design. We can play it, stop it, speed it up. I'll just hit play right now. It's actually something I don't do very often. It'll take us along this corridor, which is pretty cool. And I use that one feature line of that curb line as my point of reference. I didn't explain too much beyond it, but I'm following this corridor design. This is a visualization. This gets pretty deep in Civil 3D. A lot of companies don't really follow the power of this or use it much. Different renderings would maybe make this look prettier as it goes along. I wouldn't maybe try this if you have a slower computer. It probably would bog down, but I'm still driving on my corridor right now. I'm going to hit close for now, just to show you some of those visualization tools I was running on this corridor, which are pretty cool, that the book is just touching on briefly. So one thing with those big commands, just give it time to chug in between. Don't shock it. Civil 3D, it likes to crash enough on its own. So we'll move into the last area of sharing data in a dynamic environment, which mostly involves us learning a little bit about data shortcuts, ways to dynamically link Civil 3D objects between drawings so multiple users can work on designs at the same time is one of their main goals. A lot of times I'm designing a road. I can do a lot of this maybe by myself, but maybe I need a team to design the water and sewer along the road, and they need to work concurrently or side by side with me. That's a lot of times when these tools come into play, and we expand our design drawings out to link together. So depending on your needs and your project, I always can drive sometimes how the drawing's set up. So we're basically using a data shortcut to connect objects to objects, so different drawings amongst each other. It's a data shortcut is basically a link to a Civil 3D object that enables another drawing to get access to that object through another drawing. It says, where's the source drawing? Let's bring it to this destination drawing and let me manipulate it to a certain degree in this destination drawing while keeping the source drawing relatively pure in a way. So it's not totally edited, but it can be edited how it looks in the destination drawing, if that makes any sense. When we create a shortcut, we make a data shortcuts project folder, which also will reside in tool space in here, and this will populate. This is a clunky process. It's one of the more confusing ones that every engineer has to ask me about. It's not that intuitive. It has a certain few steps to it. Let's see if I can bumble through at least the classroom example. I do this all the time at work, but let's move on to exercise 2.5 and open up the file surface. And make sure your tool space is on. Start at home. That should turn it on, but let's leave it on over here. Let's, for now, I want to leave it pinned out. I'm going to hide my properties for a minute. And just so it stays open while we talk, let's right-click Data Shortcuts. This is our first step to establishing. A lot of times, so this is, say, my survey, my land survey of existing conditions. This is a lot of times how they start. I data shortcut in existing conditions into other maps to use existing conditions in multiple design files. This would be a good, typical starting point, really. We'll start by setting the working folder. So one more time, right click, not left click, set the working folder. It wants us to set it, browse to our chapter files. So wherever you save those, I'll bear with me for a second. I'm going to go to where I did mine just for the video. Wherever this folder is that you downloaded all your files, that's where it wants us to click. Not inside of it. Let's go up 2 levels. So our drawings would be in here. Sorry, in here. They would be following down here, but they're not showing because this isn't for DWGs. We'll just click this folder, say select folder. Okay, nothing seemed to happen, but it should have. And we're going to right click Data Shortcuts again. This is where it should populate. We're going to say New Data Shortcuts Project Folder. This is the second part. Okay. In this case, we're going to say Sample Project. Put your name just to verify it. We'll go into Windows Explorer in a second. And we'll just accept all this. We can put more here, but we don't want to. Hit OK. It'll populate. It says that has been created. Now if I go to my Windows Explorer, this is deeper in here. I made it right here. This is what it made. So it goes a couple steps deep. This is where my objects will populate that link between drawings. So it should have created its own little folder here, just to show you what it did. The book is terrible at explaining that. So we'll continue on from that. And we'll say, we're going to save the drawing first. And there's a couple ways to do the next step. It's to create the data shortcut. One would be, as the book says, go to Manage and create data shortcut. Some of the stuff we were doing here, these right-click options, as you see, they're also up here. Set working folder, then new shortcuts folder, then create the data shortcut. So it goes 1, 2, 3. Or 1, 2, 3. And then there's some of these you can associate to multiple drawings and validate. These are deeper options that solve corrupt ones, but for now we can go here as well. Create data shortcuts, or we can go create data shortcuts. It says it cannot write because it's read only. Interesting. Let's try it again. So for the sake of explaining this, if you're having trouble with this error, cannot write data shortcut It's way too long. It says it's in a read-only area. Interesting. Let's just start this process over again, and let's say let's pick a spot in my desktop somewhere. Let's say set working folder. Let me get out of here and let me go to the C drive. Excuse me. Users. Let's just go to my documents. Let's put it in my autosave area. Just for the kicks and giggles. And it should have done that. Yep. Let's right click and say new project folder. Let's just call it test1. It should go there. This is going to my C drive, so it should work. Now we're going to create data shortcuts. This is the dialog box you should see. It wasn't letting me go on I have a external hard drive. I don't know why it was doing that. If you have problems with that, try a different file location. That was good to see. I just went to my C drive in my docs just to get through this to show you. I'm going to say yes. This is all I want, a data shortcut. I'm going to hit OK. Now it's populated in my tool space here, right here. It's now populated, so I cascade that down, reopen it. I have an option now to shortcut this in any other file. Not this one, because this is where its destination is, or its source. So let's continue on, let's hit save. We'll go to the alignment file. We'll repeat steps 7 and 8. And what do they mean by that? So what they mean by that is we've already set our working folder. We've already made a folder for things to get linked to. We just need to keep creating data shortcuts. So now I'm in the alignment. Let's say that there's one designer just doing alignments right now. One mapper did the surface. Someone else is doing the profile. Well, I already have the first two steps done. Set working folder and new shortcuts. Same up here. All I need to do is continue to create data shortcuts. So it recognizes I'm in this drawing. There's only 3 things to shortcut in this drawing possible. It'll recognize all the things you want. You can unselect or select all of them. And this one just wants us to do one of the roads. We'll say OK. Give it a second. It will populate in here and it will be a centerline road. Now this is eligible to be shortcutted in any other drawing. Keep in mind, if you switch projects and to different areas, you will need to update where your data shortcut folder is. You'll need to relink to another folder for another project. Bounce between projects, you have to set the data. You have to reset the folder that you're looking at, basically. So we're just staying in one right now. We're going to continue on. We're going to go to the profile drawing. And this time it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to go, so think of this profile drawing. This is one of your main ones I'm going to check you for in your homework, just to see if you followed through in these data shortcut steps linking drawings together, is we're going to add the surface and alignments to this drawing. So we're going to start by going to the data shortcuts. We'll go to surfaces, and now we're going to say, so my surface drawing and my alignment drawing are my source drawings. Well, this profile drawing, consider it my destination drawing where those alignment and surfaces are going to go into right now. Say right click, create reference, and we can do whatever on this. Let's call it 1 to 5 design contours just for fun. That's the Civil 3D style of the surface. We'll hit OK. We're going to do the same thing, steps 12 and 13, but also, see, it's here it added this surface from this file live into this drawing. It can't be edited but we can change the appearance and the style of it in here. So it's kind of live, pseudo. It's still controlled in the source drawing, the data's in the source drawing, but the presentation is now in the destination drawing. So we can change the presentation of this surface, but not the source data. We'll do the same thing with alignment. Go to center line, we'll say main road, right click, create reference. We'll call it a proposed Civil 3D alignment style. I'll say all labels set for this. Okay, it should come in here. It should come in every view, of course, but there it is. It's also in this 3D view, as you can see down here. So we data shortcutted that in. And now we have live Civil 3D objects referenced in this destination drawing from other drawings. So we're going to continue our design, making the profile in this drawing called profile. We're going to start by sampling the existing ground profile. This is our first step, kind of when we got a surface and we have a nice alignment for the profile to follow. The profile needs those two things to populate its data. It needs a path, the alignment, and it needs data to pluck in the elevation or the Z dimension, the surface. So we're going to go to the Home tab to do that. We're going to go to Profile, new stuff here. We're going to say Create Surface Profile. Slightly differently worded in 2022. And we're going to say Add. And we have the surface we want and the alignment. There's only two options, so we'll say Draw in Profile View. And now we're in our Create Profile View dialog box. So we're going to create this profile as a result of the alignment and the surface in a moment. Let's just accept what we have here. The style's fine. We have a bunch of odd ones in here. We can go to Next, go through all these options one at a time. You can change which range of stations it shows, or say automatic. Same with the elevations. Squeeze it down, see? We'll just say Create Profile View. Let's pick where we want to put it. It says, remember, always watch your command bar. If you really don't know what's going on, let's pick it. Let's pick here. And we create our profile view from this alignment and surface that we just data shortcutted in this profile drawing. That's the end of Chapter 2. Got you a lot more familiar with the dynamic environment of Civil 3D and its objects and labels and how styles affect both of them. We'll start working on survey data and existing condition maps in Chapter 3.